Hey guys, this is A.B. Sigler, and welcome to the part 2 of Nocturnal Q&A. We just finished the Nocturnal Throwback podcast. You can still grab it for a while before it comes down, so go ahead and do that. And these are questions that are related to Nocturnal, but also anything else in the Siglerverse. So this is your spoiler warning.
Hello, everybody. Hello.
How are you?
I'm doing great. We are. This is a audio strip from a live stream. We did this live. If you missed episode 1 of the Q&A and you're only hearing episode 2, go back and hear episode 1. But join us Tuesdays and Thursdays, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern Time, 1 a.m. GMT. If you just had too much gosh darn coffee and you're up, or too much tea. Excuse me, too much tea, because it's 1 a.m.
Exactly
in parts of England. I think I don't know if that's one time zone or many. I couldn't tell you.
But they're all going to have a cuppa and not.
They're all going to have a cuppa. So welcome to our show. We are talking about Nocturnal. If you again did not hear episode 1, there's spoilers galore in this sumbitch. So go back and listen to it.
So we're just going to jump right in. I am reading a handful of questions. If you are hearing this on the podcast and not seeing it on Facebook or Twitch or YouTube, there are some video questions. So you'll hear my voice asking most of the questions, Scott answering most of the questions, but you'll also hear other voices, and we'll let you know who those are.
Okay, hit me.
All right. From Jeff Edwards. I know your plate is full with the gangster in the crypt. Yay! And I thought, and I wonder if there's any thought to a Nocturnal sequel, but it's probably a good ways off. Fortunately, I like short stories. What are the chances for a Nocturnal short story or two? What if Firstborn and Savior had to cooperate to prevent something bad happening to both their peoples?
We've had one Nocturnal short story, and that was in Jonathan Mayberry's Joe Ledger collection of short stories. Remember what that was called, babe?
Vacation.
Vacation was the name. That's where Brian...
Unstoppable.
Unstoppable, where Brian and Pookie collaborate with Joe Ledger. And it's a very fun story. But short stories we're so far behind on... Well, not so much anymore. We're behind where we want to be in delivering GFL Book VII, Crypt Book 1, Book 2, Book 3. Nocturnal, I have 3 more novels planned at least. However, they're not on a timeline right now. We don't know when we will get to them. I will say, though, that they will be very good. They'll be exceptional.
From Godfrey Lee.
Yep.
Too bad I can't send a voice question this time. Okay. But I can never pick a convenient time to lose my voice, can I?
No.
Anyways, as an Asian American, I love how Pookie breaks all the stereotypes normally attributed to Asian characters. With this in mind, I have to ask, who or what inspired you to be ahead of the curve and create this positive character back in 2007? Well, mostly positive. I mean, he does ruin marriages, but nobody's perfect, right?
Listen, if you got Pookie's charm, things are going to happen. There's nothing a brother can do. He can't help. He's gorgeous. I don't have an exact answer for you as to why I have an Asian American character who identifies as American, who has a Chicago accent because that's where he grew up, etc. And he doesn't know karate, and he doesn't carry a sword, and he doesn't have magic powers. He's just an Asian American dude working a job as a cop. Doesn't have a crazy Asian accent, anything like that. Because part of it, I wrote that when I lived in San Francisco. And San Francisco has a large Asian American population in the city, and I had a lot of friends, and that whole concept of but where are you from? And okay, no, they're from. You can hear it, and they were clearly born and grew up in California, Northern California, but you would hear that every now and then, and it was just kind of always weird to me. Especially, what really made it weird to me was when I moved from Michigan to San Francisco, and I would talk to somebody who was a California native for literally not even 30 seconds. They go, "Are you from Michigan?" And I'm like, "The fuck are you talking about? How do you know I'm from Michigan?" Because apparently, the Midwestern accent, I would sometimes get Ohio and sometimes Wisconsin, but there's something about the Michigan accent that was uniquely dialed in and somewhat abrasive to that population. So that just, those two things, I guess, kind of got me into it. And I've always been I'm very, very pro
melting pot,
pro America. And if you are, if you're here and you're paying your taxes and you're doing a share, I could give a rat's ass. I could give a rat's ass. But largely, I guess it's weird. Maybe that's something I saw because I was in white bread Sheboygan town and came to the big city. And
apparently it's not weird. It's good.
Well,
good weird. Maybe it's good weird.
I'm glad it's good. I'm glad you like the character. That's the thing. I'm very glad you like the character. What's the next question?
From Dana Stoll, he asks, when writing the series Bible and shopping Nocturnal for TV, did you reintroduce anything that had been in the original 2007 story that didn't end up in the 2012 final published version? Thanks again for all you do.
There's the pilot script is so much different than the book. It's got the same bones, but the skin is very different. So there's now with Danny and Paul, the two screenwriters, and Lloyd's influence as the producer, they brought a lot of different things in. So little things like, gosh darn it, Rich Verdi. Rich Verdi is Rochelle Verdi, because we started to look at it. We're like, this, you know what? This is a sausage factory up in here. Let's mix it up a little bit. And we're able to take the exact same character and just kind of do a little bit of a gender swap. And she's a total asshole, just like Rich is a total asshole. So there's a lot of things that have changed. One of the more interesting things that changed was, TV is largely about incredibly good-looking people doing things. So, the Hillary character changed drastically. Now Hillary's, a mid-20-something in the script.
That's the favorite, weirdest change for me.
Yeah, it's very cool.
I get it, and it certainly makes sense. And it makes sense in the 5-story arc that he was talking about, which all things being equal would be 5 seasons. That's the hope, And that changes quite a lot, and it's important. It's important. That change is very important to the TV show, but would have been irrelevant in the book.
Would have been irrelevant in the book. So to summarize your question, maybe a couple things, but it's nothing that really jumps into my head as far as stuff I cut from the throwback version that wound up in the TV show.
Sure. All right.
Do one more of these and do a video question after this?
Sure.
Okay.
From Scott Adkins. Way back when, while I was pursuing this Siglerpedia, I learned that the Creterakians had given up trying to conquer 2 interstellar governments, the Rewall Association and the Kurgurk. Specifically, it is mentioned that the Kurgurk didn't even notice the Creterakians. Then he says, huh? How is that? How is it possible? How could you fail to notice obnoxious bats flying around and literally disintegrating your fellow beings? And also, what about the Rewall? Why did they give up on that race as well? And then he says this, I have meant to ask this at literally every Q&A for the past decade or so, but this time I finally remembered before it was too late, or at least I hope I did.
Well, one of the things I play with in the GFL with the sentient races is they are not, I don't have people with bumps on their noses, as they called, as the Battlestar Galactica guys, when they sent out their series pitch, the way they described Star Trek was people in funny suits or, humans with various bumps on their noses. The aliens in the GFL are very, very, very different. The Rewall are, I believe that's the bacterial based. And in Creterakians, the Rewall, the Kurgurk, and other ones have a completely different outlook on existence and life and reality. You could go slaughter, 50,000 Creterakians, and the 10 that are left wouldn't give a crap, because individual life doesn't mean the same thing when your identity is as a flock, as a group. The Rewall...
or the Kurgurk, you mean?
Well, the Kurgurk I've not introduced yet, so I'm not going to go too much into them. But a little bit. The Kurgurk homeworld is so, like, you'll see a little bit of it in the Stone Wolves, I think. You can't even exist on it without massive amounts of protective gear and life support, etc. Yet that is their native environment, so they can survive and do all kinds of stuff there. And there's questions about what actually constitutes an individual. The Kurgurk and the Rewall both, you blow them up into 100 pieces, maybe there's 100 different individuals. So yeah, you can blow someone up, but if each of those pieces can go on and then become its own entity, then that changes the game as far as how much they care if you do blow them up at all. The Prawat were like that to start with, but eventually in their evolution, their biotechnological evolution, they get to a point where the assemblage of minids that eventually attains sentience and consciousness and thinks therefore it is, shortly after that, it can't split anymore. If it does, then that individual dies and there's 2 completely new individuals. So they eventually that was kind of weeded out, evolutionarily speaking. So that's a rough answer with stuff I can't get into yet, but hopefully we'll get into by book 8.
And we have, I think you guys know this, the Creterakians, how they took over the universe is when their force shows up, it's literally millions and millions and millions of Creterakians that show up to take over your society. And so we had a discussion once where it was sort of akin to, say somehow every single ant in the United States was destroyed. It wouldn't matter to the population of ants in the world. There's a bajillion ants in Australia. There's a bajillion ants in South America. And not only would they not know or care, they wouldn't even notice that huge part of their society was wiped out. And I think that is a similar thing sometimes to the different types of species.
I'm a huge biology buff fan, and have always just been fascinated with all the different varieties of life that exist on planet Earth alone. And, as you can tell by reading the GFL series, the crypt era of the GFL series, this concept that we're all going to be we're all going to get together with another race, and everybody's going to be super happy and erudite and educated, and there'll be peace, and we'll get rid of money because it's not necessary anymore. That's all a bunch of horse pucky. We're going to just slaughter whoever we meet. They're going to slaughter us. Everybody's going to look super weird and gross. And geez, we can't even get along now. We all look exactly the same. We all look exactly the same. We can't get along at all now. What's going to happen when when the person you're rooming with is half grasshopper, half mouse, half bacterial slime, which sounds pretty gross.
Yeah.
Rob would like that, though. Rob Otto would like that.
Okay.
Yep.
Do you want to do a video or you want?
Yeah, let's do video. Okay. Let's do video. Bum, bum, bum. So far, so good. I may have just jinxed myself. All right, here we go.
This is our friend Joshua Loya.
Joshua Loya, hit it.
All right, Sigler, got to ask you, in this short period of time, was there any scene in Nocturnal that was so fucked up, even you were like, holy shit, I can't believe I actually wrote that? Did you have any nausea during the birthing scene when you wrote that? Just curious. All right, thanks for writing an awesome story.
All right, going back to May now. Thank you for the question. Yeah, there was a bunch. Nocturnal. There was a lot in Nocturnal, actually. The mommy mating scene was very disturbing. Aggie being kept in the white dungeon.
That's so unfriendly.
That was really, really hard stuff to write. And it's not fun. It's not funny, even though it's a fiction story. Hopefully you feel gutted when you read what happens to him and the Mexican's family, and everybody in there, etc. So those were very difficult. The scene with Chief Zoe at her house with her family.
That's very hard.
That is, I think, one of the best scenes I've ever written. This is a powerful individual who has control over a lot of other powerful people, and she is put in a situation where she is absolutely, completely helpless and has to stand by while the love of her life is killed in a really brutal, brutal fashion. Because if she doesn't, then her 2 children will die. And if she tries anything, all 3 of them will die. So it's very much it's a really gross Sophie's Choice in a way.
Yeah.
But
it's very much a Sophie's Choice.
It's very much Sophie's Choice. Those I'd say those 3 scenes were really difficult to write. And there were times when I'm like, dude, am I going too far with this? And that is part of trying to get into the alien consciousness of someone who's not human. They don't think like we do, and they do things. But to be fair, humans do that shit to each other all the time.
Right.
All the time.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay.
So from Joseph Aldred, well, here we are again, and it's time for a few more questions about the craft. Joseph is also a writer, so he always asks questions about the craft. What is your super duper method for planning a story? After seeing J.K. Rowling's one-sheet partial outline for one of her books, I've become curious how other writers come up with the skeleton of their story. And as a short aside, I'll ask them both together, I'll remind you. As a professional writer, what options do you have for medical insurance in the United States?
Okay, so let's go break it down for me. The first one is, how do I structure it? Do I have that right?
What is your super duper method for planning a story?
My method is, I am absolutely an architect. There's the analogy that there's 2 general styles of writing. There is the gardener, like George R. R. Martin, who just, it's called the gardener because you plant seeds. You start writing a character, and then you just see where that character goes, and then you keep writing the story. And hopefully you've had some other characters, and they grow, and they wind up crossing paths. And that's why stuff like George R. R. Martin writes can be so broad and huge in scope, and it feels like this real world that you'll never get to the end of. But also at times, plot threads don't line up. You wind up writing yourself into a position where things can't possibly connect without a bunch of retconning, et cetera, all these things. So that's not my personal style. I like to read those books, but not my personal style. I'm much more in the thriller camp, and those are the architects. The architects are the people who plan the whole story out so that that thing that you don't think about that happens on page 3 is hugely important on page 58, and by page 300, oh my gosh, now I'm planning stuff in your head that you won't think about till later. So when a bunch of crazy stuff happens, the crazy stuff actually seems normal because I've already put all the stuff in your head. So as an architect, I outline heavily. I'm building the framework of the building, so to speak. And then the second draft, we put up drywall, run electrical, run plumbing, start to rough everything in, still making changes. Third draft, now we're starting to put finishing coats on things. So we know what it's going to look like roughly before we start. That's how I do it. So the way I do it, extensive outlining. We can take up to 2 weeks to outline. One of the books I recently did is a 72-page outline.
Yeah, and normally it's a 2-week outline. Pandemic, you had a little more time. You were taking care of some family business back in the day, and that was an enormous, enormous outline. That was and then you got, for that book from your editor, you got back the single-spaced 17-page letter.
Yeah, it was rough. And then I will write, and then invariably the outline breaks in short order because the characters start to do things that I don't want them to do or I didn't think it through enough. And then I have to go back and re-outline, write, re-outline. Usually by the time I get to the end of the first draft is pretty close. And then with continuity edits, we'll have to go back and change some stuff. The problem with my style is when everything is so planned out, it's this huge house of cards that you tip one domino over the wrong way, it knocks down 17 other dominoes. And then that's why it's a constantly iterative process. I change this. I think it's easy. It winds up breaking 4 other things. Then all those 4 things have to change. They break other things, and it becomes really difficult. What was the rest of his question?
He was just asking, as a writer, do you have any options other than the Affordable Care Act in the United States for insurance? And I can answer that question.
Okay.
So we do use Covered California for our insurance. We could, because we are a business. It's not because he's a writer. There is no insurance from the Writers Guild of America, as far as I know. But because we are a business, because we're an LLC, we could probably try getting written as a business. I did that for my last business, Audacity Events, which was an event planning company with 2 people in it. And that's how we did that. It's so incredibly unfriendly to the tiny, tiny business. And it's so expensive that the Affordable Care Act was a godsend for us. So that's what we do now and hope to do continuing on.
Yeah, it's still there.
Yeah. From Bill Cripps, he says, are there any near future stories coming? Something to start filling the gap between the modern day timeline and the GFL timeline.
Oh, that's very good. That you can tell that's old schooler right there. So there's different eras to the Siglerverse. There's the modern day era, infected, contagious, pandemic, ancestor, Earth core, Mount Fitzroy. Anything that is roughly set with people like us and in an equivalent of our culture as it is right now, though that's the modern day era. There will be more. All the rest of the Nocturnal books, of course, will be modern day. And Ancestor, Descendant would be modern day. Then we jump up 500 years to the Crypt era. The Crypt era, mankind has gone to the stars, met other races, and killed them, and been killed by them, and people eat each other. It's awful. So the Crypt is the more realistic version of what it will be like if we ever meet alien races, where I have a very dark vision of what's going to happen with that. And then 700 years from now is the more Star Trek-ish, the races are largely working together with still a lot of racism, speciesism, etc. But still you can have different races interacting in something as civil as a football game. So the short term, the question is there anything in the modern era that's going to connect to the Crypt? I can tell you this, it all connects to the Crypt. There's so much stuff going on in the modern day books that will come to fruition in the Crypt and eventually comes to fruition in the GFL. So the Siglerverse, you don't have to read everything, but everything you read is going to matter somewhere down the line, even if it's just a fun Easter egg or something like that.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
From Godfrey, we have another question. Would you do Sparkle Horse exactly as you presented it for April Fool's Sorry, Nelson. That's great. For real, if James Patterson reached out to you, but on the conditions that it becomes a core book of the Siglerverse and that every future Siglerverse book you write must reference it.
Look, dude, James Patterson has got a lot of money. James Patterson is just, he's got like a whole bathroom made out of $100 bill stacks, and he wipes his butt with thousands. Everything is possible. You know, we are creators. If Spielberg shows up and goes, I love this. I didn't know Spielberg had this accent. Apparently he does. I love the Sparkle Horse. It's fabulous. What I want to do is make a movie. Can you incorporate everything else? And then I'll buy all your other stuff too. Like, yes, Mr. Spielberg, I can absolutely do that. So if somebody shows up with a big enough check, there's no end to the number of things that I can write. That's my answer.
From Scott Atkins, what was Marie saying when she took a husband? I think I figured out my love. That was pretty obvious, but the rest is beyond my exceptionally limited knowledge of the Frenchian language, is what he called it.
It largely depends on how accurate Google Translate was at the time. I did have a French speaker fact check it for me. We've got a couple of German speakers, I think, in the room right now who are very helpful with stuff of that nature. But I'm not entirely sure. I believe it was something along the lines of "Come to me, my love." You know, let us be one together. Because she's crazy. She's crazy.
She's super crazy.
So I don't know exactly, and I doubt if I will have the chance to look it up. So you can interpret whatever you want.
Robert Gelb asks, when Brian broke into the Jessups' house and attacked Adam, how did Alder Jessup know Brian was not a monster but a savior?
Okay, I'm trying to remember. That's a very good question. Well, the Jessups, I'm going to answer this as best I can, knowing I might be missing some stuff. The Jessups do not have any kind of monster radar, right? They don't know exactly who's a monster. The real interesting thing with the Nocturnals is the Ringers. The Ringers those are Nocturnals. They have the same genotype as the rest of the Nocturnals, but they present as phenotypically normal human beings. So they didn't know one way or another. Or the other hidden part of that is they may already know that the savior is actually one of them. Some of this stuff comes out in the later books in the series, and I can't really share all of it right now.
Yeah, and I was going to say there's part of it, which is that the Jessups also, this is not their first rodeo, you know, so they may not have actually known, but they're better safe than sorry treating it like that. There's a related question from Baza that I'm going to ask right now because it makes sense. How many Marie's children are there who don't know that they're Zed and just live a normal life? The Ringers.
A lot. There's a whole bunch. And that comes into play more in book 2, 3, and 4, and 5. So, but there are enough of them that you will be seeing other characters who are like, I'm what?
Yeah.
That's my answer. Then we'll do this, and then we'll do a video question.
Okay, this is actually, since I switched to Baza for that one, I'm going to ask he asked two. The other one was, if they were running a race, how much faster are the Nocturnals than humans? One's like Sly, he's asking about.
It depends on the Nocturnal. They have a lot of variation in their physicality and in their, if I'm using it right, in their phenotype. So there's big ones, little ones, fast ones, slow ones, strong ones, weak ones. So it really all depends. This is kind of a street level superhero. So think this is Daredevil with monsters. So you are going to have some that are wicked fast. Do you have any that are as fast as the Flash? No, none of that still
fits in this universe.
Yes, yeah. I'm not demeaning DC, but that silly physics-free superhero stuff, the Nocturnals don't get to that level. So there's a limit on how fast they are, but you can bet your ass there's some Nocturnals that you can't outrun, and they're going to get you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, and that's pretty much every Nocturnal for me, except for most of them. Anyway.
A's real slow. Real slow.
We're going to do a video question from Larry.
Here we go, ladies and gentlemen. Let's give this a shot. Nice mask. I like it.
It's lovely. This is the mask.
Hey, Scott, what happened to the rookie comic that is mentioned in the Talkie Talk in the Nocturnal podcast?
Son of a bitch.
Thanks. Bye.
I've never liked you, Larry. Never liked you not one time. Don't like you at all. Go ahead, babe. I
will say that there is also a question that doesn't really fit that I thought I would tag on here is also what happened to Addictive Comics.
Yep. So in short, we tried to work with some people, again, creator-owned, powerful artists trying to make a comic book out of my intellectual property, and we got a bunch of pages done for it, and we were not able to get that off the ground. We were trying to do a mostly all digital model. I think this is even before Comixology. So we were trying to do some all digital model of that, and there's a reason you have to pay money for comic books, because it's a complicated business. It's not something that just anybody can do. And even when you find a so-so creator-made comic book that somebody just went in their basement, did their own thing, put it out, it's a huge accomplishment. So the worst comic book you've ever read is better than the ones we put out, because we've been able to put out one issue so far, and it just hasn't worked out for us. That's the best answer I got.
William Price asks, he's reading the Dystopia Triptych at the moment, and it made him wonder if the FDO ever reads other stories when he's part of an anthology. What about A?
Do I read other stories in the anthology? Is that the question?
Yeah.
Gosh,
You haven't yet.
I do read some of the stories.
I think he means narrate.
Oh, do I narrate?
Yeah.
No. Sorry. No, now I get it.
Yeah, because he asked me to, yeah.
No, other than our own short story collections, no.
Yeah, and I will tell you that it's also not terribly common for Scott to read his own stories in somebody else's anthology. If you were asking about reading, since you asked us both, I'll say I often read all the stories in an anthology, but Scott mostly listens to audiobooks, so unless it's an audiobook, which is rare for anthologies, probably not, right?
Probably not. And excuse me, voice starting to go. We're going on 2 hours here. It's also a simple business choice. I could make X amount of money reading a story for a short story for an anthology, and that's great, and that would be fun. Except that same amount of time I spend doing that, if I'm working on our own intellectual property, that is something that will make us money for the next 50 years. Mm-hmm. Or for me, I'm going to live to be 133.
Well, right.
Yep. So the rest of my life, that product that I create will continue to make small amounts of money. You add those together, you can make a living off it. When it's work for hire and you're just doing it for somebody else, you get that one paycheck and then you're out. So we tend to gravitate. We want my time being spent on things primarily that are going to be our digital pension, as you call it.
Exactly. Yeah. So we're going to do a handful of rapid fire questions. Yes or no? Quick.
Okay.
Let me find them. Sorry, I should have done that first. Who do you think is the bigger jackass, Andy Crothwaite or Angus Cool?
Crossweight or Cool? Who's a bigger jackass? Read Mount Fitzroy. You'll know the answer to that.
Who would win in a fight, Andy Crossweight or Rabbi?
Rabbi.
Do you think pre-infected, pre-knee injury Perry Dawsey would do well in the GFL?
God, that's a good question. We've gotten various versions of that question. Probably not. I mean, he's 250 pounds. He's 6'4", 6'3.5", somewhere in that ballpark. So he'd be pretty small as a linebacker. I think John Tweedy's up 295, 300, somewhere in that ballpark. So he might do okay, but I don't think he'd be the rock star he was here on Earth.
Can Brian make babies?
You have to wait to make sure that I get Nocturnal Book 2, 3, 4 out someday.
In the episode where, this is Robert Gelb, who's in the chat room. In the episode where Rex gets introduced to Lanza, he's described as follows, and I am paraphrasing. Rex was 5'5". At 12 years old, he was on the small side. What WTF, I'm on the small side for 12 years old? It feels kind of personal. I thought I'd mention that because you talk about you being a tiny person.
I was a tiny man.
Okay, those were the quick ones.
Rapid fire?
Yep, and then we have another video, and then we have a couple more.
Okay. Anybody who's still here after all this time, we love you. You're fantastic. Thank you for hanging out with us. This is super fun. My voice is starting to go. So now let's go back to, so far, we have not had a technological meltdown. Let's see what happens. Who's this, babe?
This is Lisa.
Lisa, here we go.
Sutton.
Now, it looks to me like the volume might be a little low on this, so just everybody be quiet, take a breath, hold it, and here we go.
Had hit that with my nose. My studio assistant, Lisa Sutton. I'm from Austin, Texas, and I make things like that. Excuse me, let me get these puppies together.
Those are great.
So they can be in the picture. I have read my daughter all of the GFL novels. I wanted to know if the Gangster is coming out in paperback, right, Polka? I gotta turn this off.
That was lovely.
Let's see. Is the Gangster coming out in paperback? I don't know. I just write them.
Here's the thing. We have the same plan for all the GFL books. The novellas are digital only, and if and when we can ever print something, we might discuss an omnibus, a special order omnibus of all of those together. That said, Novellas are always digital only at the beginning, and novels, which the Gangster is, if it's called a novel, it is going to be a hardcover special edition like you're used to, and digital ebook and audiobook, and eventually a paperback. And the paperbacks are not limited edition, and they're not necessarily signed and all that stuff. So yes, the answer is if and when we can reliably print things again, the plan will be just the same. That said, I can't get the hardcover printed yet, and I'll give you a tiny update about that. I think that's probably going to happen sometime in January. We'll get on the presses for Nocturnal sometime in late January. Okay. That's my best guess. That means they'll arrive to us sometime in February. And then we have to figure out, we normally used to do something we called Hell Week shipping. And Hell Week shipping was we invited a whole bunch of junkies and we gave them pizza and beer. And they worked their tuchuses off for us for an entire week. And we shipped 2,200 or 2,000 books in a week. It's going to be the two of us doing that. So we're going to do it as fast as we can, but it's probably going to take a little while because
I'm going to need to make sure all of my book work is done, because that is all we will do for, I'm going to guess, 2 weeks.
At least
2 weeks.
I mean, we did it the first time with the Rookie, which was more copies. And the first order, the first shipping, we did that alone too. And that took 9 14-hour work days to get done. So hopefully we'll be able to figure that out. Right now, I'm actually looking for a place for us to do that, a physical space for us to do that, because that's also difficult to do in a purple lockdown space like we are in Southern California.
Okay. Next question, maybe?
Yeah, we don't have too many more altogether, but this from Brian Stellig. Thank you for this throwback, especially during this pandemic. It really helped get me out of my 2020 head for a short time each week and revisit 2007. It made me realize I've been enjoying your free content for a very long time, and this year you even added happy hours twice a week. Where, how, and when can we do something for you? Oh, that's so nice.
That's very nice. Well, you guys buy the books. That is the biggest thing. And that is the core of the business. The biggest things you can do for us are, when we do books out, obviously buy the books, give the books as gifts if you can afford to do that. And the most important thing you can do is spread the Sigler's Tank. Tell other people about the stories. Tell them what you like about the stories. Badger people a little bit. Like, look, I know you're not a football fan. Trust me, you got to read this. That kind of thing, that has an exponential effect that could be very beneficial to A&I and keep us, living high in the hog here in our COVID-proof dome.
All the Twinkies.
But that's basically, we do this. This is our job. We do this to make money. We are capitalists, and we are trying to make a successful business. But we also, as cheesy as it sounds, get an enormous amount of satisfaction and personal happiness out of developing a community of people that are not assholes to each other. That is the biggest thing that we do, is watching friendships generate in person, online, through the work. And it's really, really, really special to us that we have been able to touch so many lives. So buy the books, spread the stank, tell other people about it, and don't be dicks to each other in the world of Siglerism.
And one other addition to spread the stank, if you have friends who are like, gosh, I'm going crazy in lockdown, say, just join me this one time. I'll be in the chat room too, and give them this information for this chat. Because the reality is, if they come here, Kyle, before you sign off, email me at info@emptyset and tell me about that what you're doing with the Rookie, because I might have resources. But if they come here, they'll get to know us. They'll get to know Scott. They'll get to know all of you guys who you're here because you loved the books. And that is a way that is also helpful for us maintaining our sanity in lockdown, which is why we do this for all of us. And also might create a new fan here and there.
Dr. Daniel Baker, PhD, says, what you can do to help Scott is send scotch to Scott's friend Dan. Dan, just have a pint. Wait for all this to blow over, buddy. It's gonna be over soon. Next, babe.
I think we have just two more.
Two more, and we'll finish with one video. I was warned that this video question is longer than the others. Oh, yeah. So we're saving it till the end because it broke the 20-second rule, but I don't know what's on it.
And he's a personal friend of ours.
Yeah, yeah.
So every once in a while during the podcast run of the original Nocturnal, you would share an interesting URL that I'd try to check out, only for my browser to go nowhere. He's talking about now in 2020, it goes nowhere. Do these pages have a new URL or are they kaput? And one is Addictive Comics, which we already talked about.
I think that's gone. Pretty sure it's gone.
Another one was scottsigler.com/posters, and that was during the release of of Contagious, the sequel to Infected. And one of the marketing strategies for that were 6 digital posters that, if you put them together, had a different, bigger reveal. And that was for a way to do that. And we don't have those anymore. That's not an option anymore. You can't get those anymore. So that's also kaput. And then the last one was scottsigler.com/Brian, and I have no idea what that was. I've never heard of that.
The one I just checked was earthcore.biz, which I thought is what it was. We're still paying for that one, so
we should probably do something about that.
I thought I had that site, but apparently no. That was sort of in vogue for cutting edge authors back in the day, and we put a lot of work into setting up active Easter eggs. Like Infected was part of what made Infected great is if you'd read about it and you never heard of Morgellons, and then you would Google Morgellons disease, people would they would shit their pants. Like, wait a minute, what? This is a real thing? And it was ways to pull people deeper down the rabbit hole. So I'm engaging your eyes or I'm engaging your ears, and then I get your hands on a keyboard, get you to go look up a thing, and then there's a thing there when you get there. And people do it all the time right now. I mean, The Boys does it. It's almost mandatory if you have a fictional company or something like that in a show. There is a website for it now that people are paid to maintain. You go back 15 years and nobody was doing this, and but we have not been able to keep those things up for all this time. So it just
and for those of you who are watching live with us, Big John Vizcarra just put a link to where you can read about the promotions from Contagious. If you're not. But you're listening to the podcast, you can go to the Siglerpedia, which is siglerpedia.scottsigler.com, and Google posters, and search posters, and that will come up.
I just got the best one-liner ever, Richard. Okay. It's in the chat room. Sorry, guys, listening at home. We have some funny stuff going on in the chat room right now.
Okay, and Robert Gill had one more question. It's also our last written question, and then we'll hear from the video. And finally, in the throwbacks, you mentioned the New York Times bestseller list a few times, but I haven't heard that recently from you.
What?
Is old school media not as important for authors anymore?
Okay. I don't know what to tell you when literally everything I put out says #1 New York Times bestselling author Scott Sigler, because we snuck in the #1.
He's saying talking about the list. Like during the talkie talk, you talked about the Times list.
Yeah. Well, things have changed a lot in the meantime since then, and then it was somewhat more mathematical, perhaps. Like everybody's always been trying to crack the code of the New York Times list. The USA Today bestseller list is straight up sales, nothing but sales. The New York Times bestseller list, which has a lot more street cred to it, if you will, is not based on math at all. You have to sell a ton of copies to get on the list, but also you have to be the right author at the right time with the right book,
in the right week, and the right reviews.
The right week, the right reviews, and unless you are an established, like Stephen King's always going to be top 5 no matter what. But for newer stuff, and frankly, it can get very political. And if you were doing the right thing at the right time, somebody in that department can just kick you up 20 notches, and it can change your life. Mm-hmm. If you don't have those connections, or connections is the wrong word. If you don't have the buzz going at that particular time, you can wind up off the list. It used to really matter getting on the list. And now that we have one, it's like being the heavyweight champ of the world. Once you've got the belt, you get called champ, even when you're 80 and you're incredibly overweight and you got a broken hip. You're still the champ. It's the way it works. We got the #1, and we would love to get more placements on the New York Times list, but it's no longer that important to us. #2, we've watched our business model grow into areas where Earthcore is not going to show up on a list anywhere. We sell a bunch of copies of that on Audible, and we're as happy as pigs in the muck, So it's really not that important. Also, the final part about it is we made a couple of concerted efforts to get back there, and we've really gotten burned out on it because we're able to deliver X amount of sales with everything I put out. That number of sales on our own is not enough to get on the list. But that number of sales, if a publisher could match our effort, we would be top 15 every friggin' time. And what we have found with the last few attempts is the publishers that we work with have not put in the same kind of effort that we have to really drive those first week sales. So it's a lot of work now, and it's difficult to get, and the benefit for getting that is not as significant as it used to be. So we're just kind of the fat 80-year-old champs walking around with our title belt over our shoulder.
I'm glad you had that hip replacement, though.
Yeah, it's very good. It's very good.
So we have one more video question, and then we'll close out the podcast version of the Nocturnal Q&A. We do have a few more things for you guys in the chat room, just one or two if you want to stick around, all 7 of you or how many. Oh, no, lots of people are still here. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, here we go.
Hello, future Dark Over couple lords. Does that work? I don't know.
It works.
I'm so happy you guys got married. One of the best things I'm seeing this year. So, yeah, I haven't been listening to Nocturnal. I love it. And I loved it when it first came out. But I just haven't had time. I really want to do a re-listen, so I am going to go back and catch it up. But my question, because this is about questions. We have questions. In The Rookie, you have Weyland-Yutani as a beer company, and then you have your Alien Phalanx novel. Does that mean that the Aliens Phalanx novel does exist in the Sigler universe? And have you managed to, using a backdoor method, merge the Fox universes of Aliens and the Siglerverse?
As canon.
I'm sure someone's probably asked that before, but it just popped into my head the other day, and I didn't bloody hear the answer if they did. So sod it. I'm answering it again. Ask it again. Thank you. Love you guys. Keep doing it. And I'll send you more doggy pictures. Bye.
Bye. Love you. The answer to this question is no. One thing you do not want to screw with is Fox lawyers, Disney lawyers, Marvel lawyers. You don't want that heat. You don't want that heat. Be Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid driving your car off the cliff while Brad Pitt watches. That's what you wind up being. And nobody, once the lawyers get involved, nobody wants that. Don't want the banks to get involved. So no, there is no connection there. And also my days of kind of fanboying and putting stuff in books, that's pretty much gone. We have enough of our own stuff. So the answer is no. There's one secret lurking that I can't talk about right now, and I won't. It does involve possibly that Aliens book. We'll get to that some other time.
Okay, so that is the end of our part 2 of the Nocturnal Q&A podcast. This also ends the Nocturnal 2007 Throwback podcast. We, as ever, we only do this because you're out there, and it's our whole lives this year, and so we're appreciative for it. And we'll be back next week with the first episode of GFL Book VI,
GFL Book
The
VI. GANGSTER. Ooh, we've been waiting a long time for this, Sugar Plum, long time.
I know, and until then, not until then, but we will be back next week, and otherwise we will talk to you all
real soon. Later, bitches!
No.
Oh, wait,
we're not done.
Oh, sorry.
He's done, apparently.
Steve cut it after later, bitches! What we got, babe?
So we just have our exit. We're back to normal stuff on Tuesday for this cast. This cast will have pup dates. It will have a Siglerpedia look. It will have all that stuff, all the normal stuff. You guys have been sending in lovely tons and tons and tons of dog photos and family photos and all that stuff. We're rolling into the holidays. You're not going to be able to see your family on the holidays. Think about maybe, having them tune in here. Send us a picture of your mama and we'll show a picture of your mama and she'll be very happy, kind of thing. Think about any of that. Email it us at info@emptyset.com. Yep. And after that, we will be back. We also, nonprofit sponsor ideas. You can send that too. So we will be back on Thursday, November 17th, which is National Homemade Bread Day.
National Homemade Bread Day. Go and get that bread. Go and get that bread.
And I know at least a handful of you in the chat room have gotten very good at making your own bread in lockdown. So I figured that we should probably celebrate that. I'm going to attempt to make my own bread, I guess. Oh, no.
Yeah, sweet.
So until then, please, you guys, as this surges, this whole thing surges again in the winter.
It's surging, dog. I know we weren't supposed to hear about COVID anymore after the election, but guess what? It's still here. I'm shocked.
And we really, really, we implore you to stay safe.
Stay smart.
And stay science.
And for the love of science, listen to all the highly educated people who spend their whole lives studying all of this stuff, who have been telling you for a long time that there's going to be another surge and it's going to get worse before it gets better. That is my...
Stay informed.
Stay informed.
And because we got a little bit of sass for not doing the dating game kiss off into the sky, we're never forgetting that.
Oh, yeah. Here we go. Let's get this over here.
We'll see you guys next week. We love you very much. Thanks for hanging out with us so much tonight.
Baby, ready?
Yep.
You have been listening to Nocturnal, written and performed by Scott Sigler. For more information, go to scottsigler.com. All music in this podcast provided by Uncrowned off their album Devils and Angels, available now at the iTunes Music Store.